I feel really classy when I drink tea.
You're going to drink that tea, but you got to slurp it because you got to get the air in there. It enhances the flavor.
I feel like you're making that up.
I'm really not.
Really?
It's considered. It's oftentimes considered rude to slurp your drink, but if you're going to properly taste it, you got to suck in air with it because it helps aerate the drink.
Now, if I was in England or something, you got
to suck it through your teeth. It's like a whole thing. It's like a tasting thing.
Are you making that up?
I'm 100% not making it up, Greg. That's what? If you're at a tea plantation, in India, and you're doing the daily tea tasting to figure out which teas are good and which aren't, you would do that. You wouldn't do that if you're having tea with your mom somewhere at a restaurant.
Oh, it's hot when I do that.
Because then people would punch you in the face. People that work there would jump out from under the table and punch you in the face.
I'll keep that in mind next time I'm sipping tea at an Applebee's.
In an Applebee's? Yeah. That's a good choice.
Yeah, well, I like to go classy. Go classy or not at all. That's a phrase I say a lot.
You should put that on a bumper sticker. You can make $1 million off of that.
Not at all.
This is a stellar start.
Welcome to Player 2 Press Start. I am killagreg. You can find me at killagreg17.
I'm Dan. You can find me at the Polygon1.
You can find us at Player 2, PLAYRTWO,
on Twitter.
Today, we are going to do a cavalcade of retro beat-em-ups. Retro-style beat-em-ups.
Yeah. Because
even though we'll play a few modern games, they're still deeply in that vein of retro.
Yeah, that kind of side-scroller beat-em-up.
It seems like every time we do a retro game, we wind up doing more of a retrospective than our usual pick a game, talk about it for
complain about what we don't like about it.
We've had games we liked.
That's true.
Unfortunately, none of them hold a candle to 50 cents, so why do we even talk about them? I don't know. I thought that this would be an interesting topic because, at least in my brain, these are the original multiplayer games.
Yeah.
They started out in the arcades, made their way to console, evolved into the next generation of them. Console, what was it? Generation 3, maybe. Then they sort of went away, and now they're making a comeback. So, each one can't hold its own weight for an entire podcast. So
there's just not enough content there. There's not enough to just. I mean, they're too similar. There's just not enough. So we've covered multiple games on multiple systems, and we're sort of corralling all of those games together for one larger discussion.
Yeah. So the beat 'em up, or sometimes they're also called brawlers,
which I don't care for that.
No, I don't like that either.
I like beat 'em up.
There's a distinct style to them. And every now and then they'll mess with the genre a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But as we'll discuss, I mean, they're almost identical games.
They are.
The difference between each one is minute at best.
It does make a difference.
That's what's so interesting.
The differences make a difference.
Oh, wow. Profound.
Yeah. Good thing I was here for this analysis.
That is something that makes it so interesting. And I think it, again, goes back to a topic that you and I discuss often, is that in video games, the littlest details and decisions can make or break a game. And you're definitely going to see that in a couple things that we talk about today.
Yeah.
Like the difference between we played 3 different Turtles games. I'm going to jump ahead just a little bit. Played 3 different Turtles games. Each one of those made slight changes, and it made a world of difference between all of them.
Mm-hmm.
But just to go back into the history a little bit, the original beat 'em up that sort of started it all was the game Kung Fu Master, which was a 1-player game. I'm sure you've all played it on the Nintendo. It's the one with just the guy in the white gi who walks around and kicks people in the face.
Nice job with the gi, man.
Hey, yeah, I'm a little smart.
I'm impressed.
And that's sort of where it started, but the game that really
launched
it was Double Dragon, which we tried to play.
Yeah.
Because in our brains, Double Dragon's a 2-player game. But what we found out, at least in the Nintendo, I don't know about the arcade, was that they took the Mario approach, which is Mario plays and then Luigi plays.
Was there a third game type that we missed?
There was like a
2-player A and 2-player B?
There was a 2-player fighting game.
Okay.
So like you could be Billy and I could be not Billy, and then we would just kick each other in the face until one of us died.
Jimmy, is that the other one? That's what it was in the Battletoads.
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay.
So
that was kind of a letdown.
That was a huge letdown.
Yeah.
Because that's just in my brain. That was a 2-player game, and it's widely accredited as making this genre popular. It's hard to believe that they wouldn't make it 2-player.
Yeah.
And that's actually something very interesting that went forward again later when they came out with Final Fight for the Super Nintendo, which Final Fight is pretty much considered the best beat 'em up, one of like the top 3 beat 'em ups of all time. But for some strange reason, when they put it on the Super Nintendo, you could only play 1 player at a time, which greatly holds back that game. So, we started with Double Dragon a little bit, even though we couldn't play a 2-player, but we did give it a try. What did you think of Double Dragon?
What's that guy's name? Is it
Abobo?
Abobo? I love Abobo. And we should also mention, I think part of the reason I like Abobo is because I don't even know if the guy actually considers himself like a street artist or not. I think he doesn't, but there's a local guy in Albany who, and kind of around the capital region of New York, he puts these Abobo stickers up, and like around town, and they just show up in random places, and it's like a Bobo with his legs sticking out, like kicking. And for the longest time, I didn't know what it was. Like I clearly knew it was from some old video game, but I didn't know what it was. And so I finally figured it out, and so I was kind of like interested to finally play Double Dragon with somebody, and fight this guy and sort of like understand this reference a little bit better. The gameplay was fine. I mean, I think that's gonna. For some of these games, they have standout components to them, and I really enjoyed them. This game really wasn't one of them. I mean, I was annoyed already. I was annoyed from the get-go because they took out the co-op. It was kind of difficult.
Yeah, I remember being very difficult.
Bobo kicked our butt.
Yeah, for serious. The most difficult part was lining up where you were supposed to be and where you were actually punching.
That was a struggle in most of these games.
Yeah, that's
like it's not. It's like you have to be like just perfectly lined up. It's really not forgiving at all.
The other notable thing of Double Dragon was that the character models were really good. Like they all really stood out, and the faces were super expressive. However, when somebody was dying or you were punching them in the face,
they looked horrifying.
Yeah, it was like their faces were mangled
and melting.
It was awful.
It's like you were punching a wax, mannequin that was melting.
So, before we move on to the next game, do you have any recollection of playing these types of beat-em-ups in the arcades?
I really was not. Even as I've never really been an arcade person. I would go occasionally and then just always get annoyed because I would lose a lot of money. Did you ever
have an arcade birthday party?
I did, actually. At a place in Schenectady called Wow.
Wow.
And I know. But they had a ton of arcade games, but they were all a nickel.
What?
Yeah. It was a great place, and so I used to, and that's where I got my introduction to the Simpsons arcade game.
Yeah,
And for a nickel, I mean, you can get a lot more gameplay.
I always remembered when I was a kid, my favorite birthday parties to go to, and eventually I had one as well, was at the arcade in the mall. And everybody would get $5 in quarters, which seemed like a ton at the time. Like I just remember it was like, oh my god, $5 at a time to play arcade games? This is insane. It was like Christmas every quarter I pumped in. And they were free, like they were given to you because the other kids' parents had paid for it. But when I was a kid, those birthday parties were the only time when we would be able to beat an arcade game. Because the 4 kids would just line up at Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, at The Simpsons, at the X-Men arcade game that was 6 people. And we all had enough quarters to just keep pumping them in until we beat those games. And that's an interesting feeling that, first off, that doesn't exist anymore. And that's a real shame. I miss arcades. I don't know.
I was always frustrated at how easily I lost money there. I always felt ripped off.
Even as a kid, you felt ripped off, huh?
Yeah.
I just loved games so much that it was so exciting to me to be able to, even if it was just a quarter or whatever, and I lost it pretty quickly because I was a kid. I loved the sound of the arcade, the noise and the darkness.
The atmosphere's fine. I mean, I like that part. The noises and the lights and the
thinking about it now, that's actually really gross. Like those arcades, if you took a black light in there, ugh. But that was the thing. The other thing I really loved was when you could take your report card there, and for every A they would give you like 4 quarters. For every B they would give you 3 quarters. For a C they give you 2 quarters. If you got lower than a C, they just told you to piss off.
I think part of the reason too I wasn't a huge arcade kid is because I was 5 years old when we got a Nintendo, so I was always like a home video game person.
And I certainly understand that.
So it's like, why would I waste my money at the arcade when I can go home and play for free?
Right, and that's the issue now, which is why arcades don't exist anymore. It's because the arcade simply cannot
compete.
It can't do anything really that you can't do at home. And that's why the only things that are successful are the things like Dance Dance Revolution.
Or Dave and Buster's.
Right, Dave and Buster's, which has, games that actually have a driver's seat. Or a motorcycle, or you hold the gun and shoot it and stuff.
Things you can't do.
You can't replicate that at home.
Or like the carnival games, like skee ball and things like that. Like nobody has that at home.
Right, but something like Street Fighter, you're never going to see that in an arcade anymore because it's an inferior thing. You're paying to do something you can do at home at your own convenience anytime you want.
I think the only way it could have really worked is if they didn't port those games to a console. Like the Simpsons game is that recently that got? You were telling me something about the Simpsons game.
Yep, the Simpsons got put on Xbox Live Arcade, I want to say 2 or 3 years ago, which was the first and only time you could play that on something. Mm-hmm. Which is why it still holds that sort of mystique. Yeah. The X-Men game was the exact same thing. I'm pretty sure you could not play that until very recently on Xbox Live Arcade. But that brings me to the Turtles game. In my brain, if you had asked me before you and I sat down to play these games, Greg, what's your favorite beat 'em up of all time? I would say it was a toss-up between Turtles in Time or the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles arcade game, which is actually Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 on the NES.
Right.
I just remember it so incredibly fondly.
I would have. I mean, my go-to for that would be like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2. Without question, that's just what I mean. Not that I'm a huge beat 'em up guy, so in my head I would have thought like Double Dragon, Turtles, maybe a couple others, but I would have gone right to Turtles.
Yeah, that's just like my go-to answer for this question. But when we played it, I didn't really have a tremendous time.
First of all, one of our biggest issues across most of these games was the fact that, as you mentioned, they're designed to suck quarters out of kids, and so it's challenging, and they don't want to give you infinite lives, infinite continues, and so most of these games screwed us really quick.
It took a really long time for game developers to break that habit.
Yeah,
at least into the next console generation, and realistically even past that. The game I really think that completely switched that was actually Halo.
With the overshield.
With the overshield. That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Because first-person shooters always had health packs.
Yeah.
And then armor.
Yep.
And Halo was the first game, and again, I'm sure there's another example that we're not thinking of, but mainstream, real game, Halo said, you know what? People aren't doing this so much for the challenge anymore. There's challenge there, but they're doing this to have an experience. The finishing the game for personal gratification is not the real intent of gamers anymore. They want to find out the story. They want to have, They
want to explore.
Right. They want to explore, and realistically, they want to get their money's worth, but not in a cheap way like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but in a fully realized world sort of way. Gamers want to have an experience. They don't want to beat a game.
Yeah.
And you say this all the time. Well, that game felt really gamey. That's not what you want.
Right.
These old school retro games, it's so obvious. Every time they were like, well, they put this enemy in to be really difficult, to be cheap, so that they put more quarters in.
Yeah. That's my general biggest gripe with older like NES, Super Nintendo games is that they're so unforgiving.
Yeah.
And part of it's that I'm not the greatest at these games. Some people are great at these games, and that's great that they are good at them. I'm not. So I just find having to repeat the same levels over and over, or get partway through a game and then run out of lives, and then I'm back to square one. It's like I don't want to do that. That's just boring. Like I want to move forward, and if it's difficult, that's fine. But don't screw me so that I have to keep repeating the same level over and over. And that's our issue with some of these beat 'em ups.
And going back to the Turtles, Dan and I don't remember the first level of Turtles being difficult at all when I was a kid. Do you?
Not really.
Like, I remember the second level very, very vividly in my brain, which means I got there a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Dan and I got to the end of this first level and died, and it sent us back to the beginning. And we're like, well, all right, we're done with this. Because the first level of that Turtles game was fun, but it wasn't fun enough to do again.
That's the thing. Like, it's the same repetition over and over, and that just gets boring.
Yeah,
it's already not a complicated game, so that to then have to repeat the same not complicated task, that's just obnoxious.
And I don't know if it's when we were kids. I don't know if we didn't know what made a good game or not. Were we enamored by the Turtles? It was like, oh, Turtles, doesn't matter if it's good or not.
That's probably why we bought it.
That's probably why we bought it. I also think that we couldn't afford to have new games all the time.
Yeah.
So whatever we had, we just played and assumed it was good.
And you kind of make the best of it.
Right.
Or like you get frustrated with it and you put it down, but you pick it up in 6 months and you play it again. Like I don't know. I didn't get games as frequently, I feel like. Like I would maybe get one or two, like at Christmas or my birthday or something like that. I feel like I would go long stretches without getting new games.
Yeah.
Or if I got new games, it was because they were cheap and crappy. Like
Yeah.
I had a Scooby-Doo game that I played a lot of, but like that's not a good game.
Yes. I know exactly what you're talking about. This was actually not me, but it was my cousin. But I distinctly remember him getting Mick and Mac, the McDonald's sponsored shooter for the Genesis. It was like a Contra platformer type game. That game's awful. But he got it because my grandma went to Sears or JCPenney or whatever. Was like, oh, Jeff likes video games. This one's $12. I'll get him that one.
Yeah.
I had a lot of games like that when I was a kid. I feel like maybe I got 2 to 3 games a year. That was it.
Yeah. So you kind of had to get your money's worth out of them.
That's exactly it. So whether the game was good or bad, you were going to play it.
Yep.
Play it to death. But now, we're adults. Realistically, if I want a game, I'm going to find a way to get it.
And if I don't like it, I'm just not going to play it anymore.
Yeah, pretty much. It's not like we do anything with them. It's just like, well, this sucks. Put it back on the shelf.
Yeah. But we're obviously we have a podcast dedicated to video games. We're clearly interested in gaming culture, gaming history. Like that's all a part of this, and that part of it kind of appeals to me. Retro games, in theory, appeal to me, but actually playing them never does because they're always so hard, and I get my ass kicked.
I completely agree with you. I consider myself a retro gamer, but every single time I put a retro game in, I get maybe 3-4 levels in, and I'm like, I think I'm done with this.
Yeah. And you know what I think it is? We grew up with those games. And so I feel like, we sort of have our... we've kind of earned our stripes in that sense because we grew up with them, we had them, we played them, that's all we had. We went through that phase. There's tons of gamers now who their first system was like a 360 or an Xbox One or something like that, or PlayStation, So, to them, retro games is like something completely different. But for us, it was just what we had when we were little.
Sorry, I lost my train of thought once.
So, getting back to the beat-em-ups.
So, it's an interesting contrast, though, because almost all retro games are difficult. I'm willing to concede that, would you?
Pretty much.
But there's a really thin line between something like Mega Man and these beat-em-ups. Because Mega Man was designed from the ground up to be a console game, whereas these were just arcade ports.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just so obvious in these how cheap these games are. It's so prevalent when you get to a moment where there's just a weird amount of dudes on one screen compared to every other screen.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that was designed to put another quarter in.
Or you get to a boss, or even a mini boss, and it's like you've been fine up to that. In Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the foot soldiers are pretty easy. They're fun to just cut up and hit and whatever. And then you get to Bebop or Rocksteady, and they're charging all over the screen and kicking your ass. It goes south really quickly.
And there's no way to deal with them in a fair manner.
Yeah.
Nowadays, a boss can be hard, but it's like, all right, well, when he starts to use his whip, I know I have to dive roll, and then I can attack him a few times and not get hit. If you're diligent enough, you can beat a boss without getting hurt. In those games, taking huge amounts of damage is just a given. That's just how it is.
Yeah.
So we moved on to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3, The Manhattan Project. What do you think of that one?
I don't really remember. We didn't play that very long. We went through that real quick.
Yeah.
Then we played that just about as long as we played Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2.
No, we actually played it a little bit longer because I found the game to actually be a lot of fun.
Wait, is that the one that started in Florida?
Yes.
Oh, yes. That one. Okay, that was kind of funny.
A lot of these are melding together, so
yeah, we
apologize if we.
This game was way goofier.
Yeah, I mean the whole premise is really goofy and really funny, and it looks really good. The turtles are super expressive.
It felt more cartoony.
Yes, for sure.
It felt more like an actual episode of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
And we actually got farther. We got to the third stage on this. But the problem with this game, and this crops up from time to time, is that Dan and I could hurt each other.
Oh, yeah.
Which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
It borderline makes these games impossible.
Yeah.
And
because it ruins the co-op component.
Yes. Each person doesn't want to move in on an enemy because if you both do it at the same time, you're going to wind up beating each other up. So what happens is one person will be playing while the other person stands around. And then another enemy will come in, and that person who is standing there will attack that enemy while the other guy stands around. Mm-hmm. Because no two people want to engage at the same time. And it also leads to a lot of frustration between the two people who are playing.
Yeah.
Like, it's a real feel-bad moment.
Yeah. It's like, oh, what are you doing? Stop it. Get away. Stop hitting me. And
that's something that came up a lot of years later in that new Super Mario game, where each person could accidentally knock the other Mario off of a ledge or something.
I don't know.
In the new Super Mario Brothers for the Wii.
Okay, I haven't played that one. That's the co-op one, right?
Yeah, where like 4 people can be at the same screen. It's been a long time since I've played it, so pardon me if I confuse this a little bit. But basically, you could if you made contact with another person, you would sort of like bump them a little bit, but you could just bump them off of ledges. And the game inadvertently became just a contest of not murdering your co-op partners and destroying relationships. I don't know what they were thinking. Why? Can you think of any reason why they would choose to do that?
Realism in the sense of, which is ridiculous when you're talking about Super Mario, but like...
Or Ninja Turtles.
When you're... I guess I inherently find a game more realistic when they take the time to not let you walk around other characters. Like, harkening back to our last very special episode, where we talked about Destiny, when you're in the tower, you can walk through everyone else. If they're not in your fire team, everybody else is, like, translucent. You can just walk right through them. And that's almost distracting, because it's like, no, they're a thing. I shouldn't be able to do that. So I feel like that's got to be the idea here. Is like, oh, you shouldn't be able to let them be in the same spot because, you know, they're...
In modern games, I don't know what the answer is to that. Dan and I are playing Left 4 Dead 2 for our next big game that we're discussing. And that game, obviously, you have to take liberties as a game. But that game is primarily based around realism. But you can just run through your other people. You know, you can't get stuck on them at all. And it actually kind of takes you out of it.
Yeah, sometimes like it feels like they're not really there because you're not bumping into them.
Right.
I don't know if I'm complaining about it per se, but because I would get equally frustrated trying to get around my idiot.
Well,
NPC
that's exactly
team
it.
Members.
Think about Battlefield. How many times have we just been screaming at our television for our teammates to get out of a doorway?
Yeah.
It's like, we're all going to die because you're standing in that doorway.
Yeah.
Just get out of the way. So it's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't, because neither one is super frustrating and one takes you out of the gaming experience.
Yeah.
I don't know what the answer is, but I'll tell you, in a beat 'em up, the answer is not punching your friend in the face.
Yep.
It is the worst.
Yeah.
Out of all of the things I disliked about this beat 'em up extravaganza we did, punching each other is probably my least favorite.
Yeah, for me, it's tied between like not having infinite continues, or you know, I mean, you can dock me in some way, like dock me points or something, or like bring my like if I was like super powered, now I'm back down to like square one because I had to hit continue. You know, like you can do something, but it was tied pretty much between that and like as soon as we realized that we could hurt each other, we're like, well, we're done with that game. That's pretty much how it went with each one. Which made River City Ransom really disappointing because that had some really interesting, unique stuff going on, and that game ended quickly.
Let's talk about River City Ransom next.
Okay.
This was recommended to us. We probably would not have played it otherwise.
Yeah,
but I'm glad that we did.
This is not one I was really familiar with. Like, I didn't play this as a kid. I didn't really know anything about it. Like, the name sounded vaguely familiar, but I wasn't really... This was not one I was up on.
Well, it's the kind of game that gets referenced a lot in other games and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We'll talk about its biggest influence, or what it influenced the most, much later in the podcast. But I really enjoyed River City Rampage.
Ransom.
I'm sorry.
You keep messing this one up. It's okay. There's a lot of names floating around.
If I'm not mistaken, there is a game called Retro City Rampage. And I confuse the two of them
All the time.
All the time. And never the same way. Like, it's just there's 6 words and they just get all over the place. The city part stays in the middle, I know that much.
Well, there's something.
I wish we had the patience to play this game a little bit more. I really would have liked to know what some of the stuff we were doing affected.
Yeah.
So you can... the game starts out, you do a little bit of fighting, and then you go to the town. And throughout the game, you're collecting these coins or whatever. You can spend those coins on food and like upgrades and stuff like that.
Which I thought was a really unique and interesting addition to the genre.
Yeah, it was definitely a fun idea. My only issue is that the benefits were too obtuse.
Yeah.
And this is the kind of thing, they don't put real instruction manuals in anything anymore. All they do is put a warning that, you might cause epilepsy.
Yeah.
If we had bought River City Ransom back in 1991 or whenever it was made, it's possible that the instruction manual that came with it would have told us, like, swordfish sushi roll does this.
Mm-hmm.
Here's why that's a benefit. But just playing it right in your living room without any real setup, I was very confused.
Yeah, like I bought random food and like it would increase my health or strength or defense, agility. But like it's not like I could see the stats. It's like if it increased my health, well, all right, my health increased. But the rest of it, I was like, what?
Right. It's like stamina up.
Sure.
Yeah, I accept that.
But I liked the sense of you could sort of like move up alleyways and onto streets, and like it gave me this game had a much better sense of like world building.
Yeah, I definitely felt like we were in a city
that none of the other games we played. Maybe Scott Pilgrim. Maybe that one felt a little more like a realized thing. But the rest of them, it's like this is a board. This is a level.
Right.
This felt more like you could kind of like move around back and forth, which was interesting. I liked that. And I really liked the art style of this one.
Yeah,
a lot of these
great.
games looked good, like in that kind of like interesting, appealing retro way. This one had kind of stood apart for me from most of the others in this. Like the character models and like the start screen was really striking in like the colors.
This game had a lot of personality. When you beat up a random guy on the street, like little quotes would pop up at the bottom, and be like, "Yo, take it easy, bro."
Yeah,
that's really funny, and it really brings you into that game.
And the fighting mechanics felt good, like the punching and kicking and the jumping.
Jumping felt awesome in that game.
Yeah, like I felt pretty nimble. Was this the one that slowed down when we had two of us?
Yeah.
I played it by myself real briefly the other day, and I didn't have that issue at all. And we were playing this on an emulator on my original Xbox, so that could have been the issue. Most of these games
we played a real cartridge of, but this one we were forced to get an emulator.
Yeah. And sometimes we also had another like strange issue, which I don't remember if this one had it, but a lot of them did, where like when our characters were sort of on top of each other, they would get like real flickery. We had that with like some of the Turtles games, and that's kind of an odd thing too that I could do without. Any other? Do you have any additional thoughts on River City Ransom?
Not really. I think I'd like to play it again, or get more information and then give it another shot.
I think I would be more than happy to play it if we had like infinite lives, like just throw on like a Game Genie code or something, which I know is cheap, but I want to make it through the rest of the game and like see more of it. And without doing that, it's never going to happen. I'm just being realistic.
This is also another game where we hurt each other, which was not.
And then
fun.
It ended real quick when we figured that out.
I think my impression is River City Ransom is going to be a lot of fun if we play it alone, and not so much when we play it again. Also, when you're getting food at the shops or whatever, it's one person does it at a time, which is real boring.
Yeah.
Although the dude Dan pointed out looks like he's giving the waitress the finger every time he orders something. He's like, swordfish.
Finger.
Fuck you.
Yep.
So the next, and this might be the last. Oh, we have two more NES games. We played Double Dragon 2, which didn't do much for me.
Well, it was co-op.
Yeah, we finally could actually play.
So that was nice, and it was like a bizarre future sci-fi nonsense game.
It took place in what year?
19XX, I believe.
I love that.
Yeah. This sounded like kind of a messy game plot-wise. Fighting wasn't the easiest.
No.
For some reason, I have fond memories of Double Dragon, and I don't know why now after having played these.
This is also another one where I feel like an instruction manual, or if we were kids, like a strategy guide or something, could have helped. Because there was very obviously special moves that we could do, but we really struggled to figure out what did those special moves.
Yeah, like that jumping helicopter. Wait, was that this one?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the jumping helicopter kick. We had trouble figuring out.
Yeah. Although what I will give this game some credit for was in the few levels that we did play, it had a lot of different scenarios.
Yeah, like the helicopter that flew by and was shooting bullets at us.
Yeah.
They had a lot of like levels in this, like vertical levels in the sense you have to go up ladders and pipes and other stuff. And in that one part where we were in the helicopter and then we got sucked out.
Right, like the door would open on the side of the helicopter and it would sort of, try to pull you out of it. Like, I guess it's sort of real.
Yeah, maybe not with an airplane, not so much a helicopter.
Maybe it was aggressively turning during those parts. But that was fun. I felt like it was fresh the whole time. So I guess I'll give it some credit for that.
I felt like there was a lot of variety with the levels in a little bit that we played. So I give him credit.
I'll give him some credit. Last NES game we played was a bit of an oddball. It was Battletoads and Double Dragon. What makes this game unique? First off, this game is awful.
It had some redeeming things, which we'll discuss.
It had a redeeming thing, which was that it played wonderfully.
It felt good. Like your ability to move the character around was like loose and like just enjoyable.
Almost every game we played felt like you were just in mud.
It was sluggish.
This was the only one where you would just like run from side to side and up and down, and
you were all over the place.
All over the place. But because your characters were so unwieldy, and again, this is a game where you hurt your partners, it was virtually impossible to not hit the other person.
Yeah, I hit you a lot.
You hit me a lot.
Sorry.
Like, you hit me with bodies, you hit me with floating television screens, you hit me off ledges.
Oops.
It was awful. And this one, because I think there was that constant danger of punching your friend, there were virtually no enemies at any point. There's like one enemy on the screen at any time, because I think if they put more, you would have just been wailing on each other the entire time.
Yeah. I appreciated the wacky sci-fi-ness of this game.
No, there was definitely something in the aesthetic and gameplay that was fun.
Like I like the team up aspect of this, and it makes it's completely unnecessary, I think, and that's why I enjoy it. But we didn't make it very far in this one either because we were hurting each other.
We got towards the end, and there was this weird
end of the first level.
The end of the first level. There was this weird floating clown hand thing that had a real vendetta for Dan.
Yeah. I kicked that first one's ass, and then it was like, oh, we're going to F him now.
Yeah. Like, he would be on the ground.
And it would keep hitting me.
And would just keep slapping him. It was very funny to watch.
I'm sure.
It was not a ton of fun to play.
No.
So we didn't play that one very much. But
it's like a weird it's like it's out in space and you're on like a spaceship fighting a platformer weird game. You don't even have a spacesuit on. It makes no sense.
I really love late era NES games because they play so smooth. Little Samson, Metal Storm, this game, they just run so quick and feel so good. I wish those games were more available. I had a copy of Double Dragon once. I sold it for like $50. Metal Storm's $80. Little Samson's like $400. Like all these really wonderful NES games are impossible to find, and that's kind of a shame because I wish more people could play them.
Well, emulators.
It's not the same.
I know it's not the same, but
the whole time that I play on an emulator, whenever there's an issue, I always have this like, well, is it the emulator? Is this how originally would have played? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just hate... If I'm playing the cartridge and something's messed up, I just know that it's the cartridge and not the emulator.
Yeah, I figure with like Nintendo and Super Nintendo, like those games are so basic. it's probably there's something wonky with the game. The more advanced the game gets, the harder it is to emulate.
Yeah.
I mean, NES games are like, smaller than a Word file.
Well, the thing is that a lot of NES issues had to deal with memory, like how much the NES could handle at any one time. So that's like what the flicker is and stuff like that. And emulators function differently than the consoles because of that kind of stuff. Like, it just has so much memory, it doesn't know what to do with it all. So that creates other issues. Like, the game won't quite function right because it's accessing too much memory. So, in general, I just like a.
Well, me too, but I'm not going to pay $400 for a cartridge to play a game I could play for free.
For Little Samson, I would pay $400 if I found a copy. That game's great.
Wow.
Well, I also just want to have it.
All right.
So those were all the NES
beat 'em ups
that we played. Did you like any of those games?
I liked aspects of them.
If you took the best aspect of all of those games, do you think that we would have had a game that we would want to play for more than 20 minutes?
If we didn't hurt each other in River City Ransom, we would have played that a lot more.
I think you're right. I think if River City Ransom played like Battletoads, like speed-wise and fluidity, and we didn't hurt each other, I think that would have been a wonderful game.
We would have played more of Turtles 3 if we didn't hurt each other.
That's true, too. That game played pretty well.
That was really... I mean, that is not something I remember being an issue with beat-em-ups.
Me neither.
I have no recollection of like that being a problem. So that's...
Weird.
Yes.
So we moved on to the Super Nintendo, where we only played 2 games. I thought we played more. I guess we only played 2 games. It should be noted that Final Fight, which is a Super Nintendo game, most people consider that sort of the classic beat-em-up. And as I addressed earlier, it just does not have co-op on the Super Nintendo. So there's no reason for Dan and I to play it. Just know that that's a pretty great game. But what is pretty much considered the best beat-em-up of all time, I at least know, not their totally reputable source, but when Screw Attack did their top 10 beat-em-ups of all time, they picked Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 4, Turtles in Time. Which was awesome.
That was a great game.
Out of everything we played, Turtles in Time is
It stood
by
out.
far the best game.
Yeah.
What do you like about it?
Looked good. It looked awesome. Now, granted, we were bumping up to a Super Nintendo from playing Nintendo games, so that helps. But I rarely even think that I don't think Nintendo games ever really look bad. Like Nintendo and Super Nintendo, because of their style, it's almost like timeless. And Super Nintendo games look better, but it's just better in a different way, But this game, it looked good. It played well. It felt good. It was just like loose and fun and easy to get around on the screen and fight guys and creative and funny. It was a good game.
Yeah. Everything just looked so much nicer, which you don't think makes a huge difference. In general, it doesn't. But just how expressive the Turtles were in this, they had so much personality, and each turtle sort of played the way you would expect that turtle to play. They were all relatively the same, but they still had like a personality to each turtle, which was nice.
Mm-hmm.
We should mention that we are huge Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fans.
Yeah.
And you mentioned this earlier, but do you think that shaped your perspective of this game?
Yeah, it does. I enjoy games more when it's a property that I like. As I mentioned to you off the podcast, the biggest reason I played Knights of the Old Republic, just like at its core mechanics, it's it's a beautiful, wonderful, incredible game. But if that wasn't a Star Wars game, I wouldn't have played it. If that was just like a straight up fantasy game, I would never have picked it up in 1,000 years.
Which is something that I tell you about a lot, because the original Dragon Age is so. I mean, obviously it's made by the same people, but it's so much like Knights of the Old Republic. It's so much like Mass Effect that I think you would love that game. But you're just never going to play it.
I just hate fantasy, and I can't. The best I can come up with for explaining that is that, to me, science fiction, no matter how extreme it gets, like, I mean, Star Wars is like, that's basically fantasy, like walking around as science fiction. Science fiction to me is possible in theory, hypothetically. Fantasy to me is like the intent of it is the exact opposite. It's like it is completely not possible because we don't live in a world of magic. But
Right.
like science fiction is like it could theoretically happen, and that appealed to me to like a better, different future. That appeals to me, so that's why I like science fiction. That's why I like Star Wars. That's why these things kind of suck me in. So if it's a property like that, I can get on board. But I don't know. I guess I'm just like instantly bored by fantasy. You know, Lord of the Rings doesn't do much for me.
Ugh, gross.
So
Doesn't do anything for me.
Harry Potter doesn't do much for me.
Yeah, Harry Potter's fine. I didn't read any
Yeah.
books. The movies are watchable. Like,
Yeah, the movies
they're
are fine, but it doesn't excite me.
I think that this game would have been the one that stood out for us, even if it was just 4 random crocodiles who had whatever. Like,
Yeah.
it didn't have to be the turtles.
If it was biker mice from Mars, it still would have been fun.
It still would have been, yeah, exactly. But the fact that it was the turtles, it definitely helps. Like,
Yeah.
every time you see the Shredder pop up, you're like, this is fun.
It makes it more charming.
Yeah, for sure. The game mixes it up quite a bit, which is nice. Obviously, they go through time, so you see a bunch of different stuff, a bunch of different like worlds and stuff.
Kind of go through the ages.
They do some like hover bike type stuff, or hoverboards, and at one point they use like a Mode 7 thing, like F-Zero, where you're sort of going into the background and stuff. Like it feels sort of faux 3D.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of a fun effect.
Yeah.
But as a whole, this game it just felt really good.
And this is the only one we actually beat.
Yeah, but the interesting thing is it took us 27 minutes to beat. Start to finish, 27 minutes.
It's a very short game.
That's such a short game.
And here's the funny part. So we died a lot. So you have lives, and then you have continues. So you have you go through all your lives, then you continue, and you can pick another turtle if you want. I mean, we saw the life counter. We never saw the continue counter. Apparently, there's only 5 continues, or there's a limited number of continues. I just thought we had infinite continues, so I sort of was being real lackadaisical about
for sure.
about
I was
my
definitely
gameplay.
more brash than I would have normally been.
But I managed, I guess, to keep it together till the end of the game, despite the fact that I thought it didn't matter, and managed to make it all the way to the end without getting a game over. So that was nice.
Yeah,
And lucky.
I'm glad we didn't realize that there was a limited amount.
Yeah, it was nice to at least beat one of these. It was, and I'm glad it was a Turtles game that we beat.
Yeah, me too. If there was one we were going to beat, that was definitely the one I wish we did.
And you've talked about this game a lot before. My main experience was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2. I didn't really play Manhattan Project. I didn't play Turtles in Time. So it was the experience alone of being introduced to those games was worth it. But it was fun to play these other ones in the series. Because now Turtles in Time. I mean, if somebody asked me, I'd say Turtles in Time is the best.
Right.
I would no longer say Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2.
So the other Super Nintendo game we played was Knights of the Round. Which is another game that people sort of laud as a better, one of the better beat 'em ups. I thought that game was fine. My favorite part was the Capcom sound at the beginning.
Yeah.
Every time it came on, because Dan and I turned this on quite a few times when we were trying to get it to work, I would be like, man, I love that sound.
Yeah.
And I do. I'm going to put it right here. That's just the greatest sound in the world. Just reminds me of so many good games. Mega Man X, Street Fighter 2.
So this game reminds me. So just jumping ahead, but then jumping back. We also played Castle Crashers for this game. We played that before playing this. So when I was playing this, I kept thinking like, oh, this feels like the old-timey version of Castle Crashers.
Yeah, that's definitely how it feels.
This game has kind of an interesting aesthetic to it. Like, it's a little over the top, but it's still sort of trying to fit into that, like, Arthurian legend type of stuff. I played as King Arthur, and it's funny because the way he jumps, he sort of, like, throws himself forward, like, kind of a foppish gentleman.
I just picture him every time being like, whee!
Yeah. Like, he seems, like, very goofy. Like, it's like, this guy's supposed to be your king, and, like, I cannot take him seriously the way he's, like, jumping around the screen.
Yeah.
Flinging his sword around.
What's unique about this game is that the three main characters all feel very different. Dan only played as Arthur, but I played as the two other ones, Lancelot and Galahad. Lancelot moves really quick, and he spins his blade really fast.
I thought it was like begin with a P, that big tall guy. It was like
Percival?
Percival.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought it was Galahad.
Percival and Lancelot.
Percival and Lancelot, my bad. Lancelot flies around the screen and he wails his sword around, but he doesn't do very much damage. Whereas the other guy, he does a ton of damage, but it feels really slow. At no other game did we play that had any real difference in who you were.
Yeah, made no difference.
So that actually added a lot to the game. Like I felt a distinct difference. I very much enjoyed playing as Percival, the slow, strong one, significantly more than Lancelot.
And I liked the fact, I mean, I only played one character for this, but I kind of liked the fact that we were a little different, because there were times when I would sort of see you getting a little ganged up on, and I would sort of, like, jump across the screen and, like, save the day. You know, there were moments like that where I knew that I was moving faster and, could sort of help out in that situation, to kind of, like, come and save you.
And the other thing was that this had a very distinct level up system. Now, I don't really know what leveling up did, but
it gave us new armor.
I think it made us stronger, but the enemies also got stronger.
Yeah, so I don't know what the point
And that leads me to, I don't know how much of an aside we want to take about this. Leveling up in gaming in general, I always find it to be
irrelevant.
Silly.
It's irrelevant.
Yeah. If you want to level up to be more complicated, that makes sense to me. Like, if you level up and you gain new button combinations that can do more powerful things, that makes sense.
Like you unlock a skill.
Right. But if you're just leveling up to make your, now my axe swing does 10 damage instead of 5. Well, the enemy's also leveling up with you. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't make that... At no point was us leveling up in Knights of the Round make the gameplay feel any different at all.
Yeah, that's a game where it's irrelevant. But, like, in Mass Effect or Borderlands, the enemies... in newer games like that, it serves the purpose of keeping you from going farther than what you should be doing at that point. Same thing happens in Destiny. In the beta, they had characters that were so far above you, you could not take them on. So it keeps you from going there because you can't beat them. You can't get there. Leveling up without some sort of addition to the game is a waste of time.
Yes.
In Borderlands and Mass Effect, when you level up, you get an additional skill, or you can invest points in something. Like, that makes sense. That's fine. Or, like, let me invest points in, my defense or my attack or something like that. This game didn't do that. It just arbitrarily you leveled up and you got cooler armor.
In some ways, you take a Final Fantasy, for instance, and Final Fantasy VII, you're able to and supposed to, within theory, beat the game at a slightly above average level. From 1 to 100. I think you can do it anywhere from level 50 to 75, somewhere in there. However, if you want to just grind it out and, see every bit of that stage, fight every monster you can get all the way up to level 99, and you can basically one-shot the boss at the end.
Nice.
Like the final battle. I respect that, because, yes, in some ways you're kind of taking the game out of the game. Like fighting Sephiroth at the end isn't any challenge because you just hit Knights of the Round times 8 and game over. But
I love that spell, by the way.
Yeah.
That and the Bahamats.
Yes. I love them. I love those giant. I love a giant mechanical dragon shooting laser beams at the earth.
Yeah, those are always so much fun to watch. The Knights of the Round is one of the best. Speaking of Knights of the Round.
Oh wow! I can't. Wow, I didn't even realize it. But if you're willing to put the time in and you're choosing to break the game on your own terms, you can feel powerful, and that's cool. So leveling up makes sense to me in that way.
Even if it's not breaking the game per se, but like in Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, you could collect all those masks, and then you could get the Fierce Deity mask at the very end.
Right.
And if you took the time to manipulate the time in that game and wait around for it, if you were like patient enough to do that, it makes the end so much easier to beat because you're essentially adult Link.
Right.
You can do it without it, but I also respect the fact that if you're willing to put the time and effort in, that they will make it easier for you in the long run.
Right. But then you take a game like Skyrim, where the enemies within reason will level up with you. And I understand why they do that. In Skyrim, you can go wherever you want at any point. And in a game like that, if you wander off into the wrong area and you get insta-killed, that's another feel-bad moment. Game developers don't want that. So all throughout Skyrim, they allow the enemies to level with you. So no matter where you wander off to, you're going to fight relatively comparable opponents. Which
is interesting because Destiny is not like that.
Really?
Yeah. We can. I don't want to sidetrack your points. We can get back to that if you want. But it's interesting how some games do that and some don't.
But the problem with that is, towards the end of the game when you're level 50, you don't feel you have more options, but you don't feel any more powerful than you did when you were level 10.
That's what it's like. It's like that in Borderlands.
Yes.
You get the additional skills and powers, and that's fun. But the enemies are always essentially the same.
They're exactly the same as you. So it basically requires the same amount of bullets. It's just how many more numbers fly out of them at that time.
Yeah.
So in a game like this, and a game in general, I'm always leveling up is kind of an ambiguous thing in games that I don't really know where I land on. I just feel like that if they're going to give you a number, if they're going to say, congratulations, you're level 7, you should know what a level 7 feels like. And Knights of the Round does a pretty terrible job of that.
Yeah, it felt very arbitrary.
Anything left about Super Nintendo beat-em-ups?
Knights of the Round wasn't bad. I would have kept playing that. I had a game over, so that's why I stopped.
Do you think it says anything that we got significantly farther in the 2 Super Nintendo games we played than the Nintendo games we played?
Oh, no doubt. I mean, games are constantly maturing, and these are games that are more advanced than Nintendo games. Or their Nintendo predecessors, save maybe River City Ransom, which had a lot of extra stuff going on that the others didn't. But like one unique thing that Knights of the Round had was that you could ride a horse.
Yeah, that's fun.
And they would make you more powerful. That was like definitely out of the ordinary from the rest of the games. But yeah, the Super Nintendo ones felt a little more thoughtful
and forgiving.
Yeah.
They definitely recognize that at this point, it's not all about the quarters. And that's important. So, at this point, we flash forward almost 20 years.
Yeah.
Something like that. That's sort of interesting. What do you think happened to the beat-em-up?
I think that kind of beat-em-up doesn't really translate into 3D.
Yeah.
And you had a period starting with, PlayStation and N64 where you had 3D games, and that became the next thing. Why would you play a 2D game when you could play a 3D game? I would, at that point in my life, I would play a shitty looking 3D game over a 2D game any day. But looking back on it now, those 2D games have a cartoony charm to them. Like Kirby's Dream Course for the Super Nintendo, I think is an awesome game. I don't think it gets enough credit. Yeah, no, that's a great mini golf game.
Fun.
It looks good. It plays well. It's fun. Putting that up back in the late '90s or whatever, putting that up against an N64, it would have just looked dumb. It's like, well, I could go play Super Mario or Mario 64, or Ocarina of Time, And it just inherently feels like there's more there because it's three-dimensional. But now, we've had that for so long, and games have gotten so beautiful and so refined and so pretty that resurgence in retro-style games has come back. And, first of all, there's a lot of people our age. I mean, there's a lot of people a lot of ages, but there's a lot of people our age who played these when they were kids, and they have that nostalgia for them. And so I think that's where a game like Scott Pilgrim really has a niche. People that are interested in that style may be going kind of hearkening back to that, but they want it refreshed. They want it updated and more thoughtful.
I find it really funny that gamers these days were like, games are too pretty. I want them ugly. Like, that's such an American thing. But I think the beat 'em up does still exist. It's just taken a different form. Now I think you get the exact same experience in a hack and slash type game. Especially all the ones coming out of Japan, from like Clover and stuff like that. Your Devil May Cry's, Bayonettas.
Okay.
Metal Gear Rising Revengeance aside, there's so many are
Revengeance. That's a cool word.
That's like, it's
I could see that with like Devil May Cry. Definitely,
right.
I can understand that.
Is that same like alternating back and forth between heavy and light strikes and doing combos and all that stuff. And they're just more complicated. But
they're way more complicated.
But it's the same feel. Group of enemies, you're plugging along. You're really, if you put Devil May Cry on easy and you just wail on X, you're going to get to the end of the game.
Yeah.
The same way you are going to with some of these beat 'em ups.
But it's funny when you take Devil May Cry and compare that to River City Ransom.
Yes.
It's like all you could do in those early games is punch or kick, and sometimes you could jump.
Yeah, sometimes. And that, you're right, that is so interesting. It's amazing what just hitting X can do.
Yeah.
In River City Ransom, we're just hitting X and we're just doing a couple punches. Devil May Cry, we're hitting X and we're doing backflips off walls and whipping out our guns and doing all that stuff. You're still just wailing on X.
But it's funny because it feels appropriate for each game. Like, it's never like I would say that's in most of the ones that we played for the Nintendo. I never, even though we didn't have a lot of actions that were going on, like variety of actions, I didn't feel limited for the most part.
Yeah.
Like, it felt fine to me. Like, even with the Turtles games, where it's like you really have you don't have a lot of moves really, even though you're like a ninja who's a turtle with all these crazy weapons, you're not really actually doing that much differently each time you press the button. But it felt fine. It felt appropriate. It matched the game, and I didn't have any issue with that. And like River City Ransom is a pretty basic looking game, like graphics wise and stylistically, but it was fine. And the game finds ways to sort of mix it up a little bit, like by sort of working uppercuts in and things like that. But man, you take those newer ones, and it's insane how much is going on screen.
So let's talk about Castle Crashers.
Okay.
Which I think is the sort of most lauded current beat 'em up. It's made by the Behemoth, who did Alien Hominid, Castle Crashers, and then Battle Block Theater.
Castle Crashers feels the most authentic of... If one were to make a new version of an old style beat 'em up, it feels the most authentic.
I agree. But it's just... They appropriately spice it up for modern days.
Right.
The game, and a lot of this is really obvious, but it feels so nice. And you do all that stuff. Throughout all the older beat 'em ups, I was trying to do stuff that I just couldn't do.
Yeah.
It was like, I want to jump, I want to do a couple kicks in the air, I want to come down on top of something.
Yeah. You want to jump more.
Yeah, I do. I want to jump all the time. And Castle Crashers does a really wonderful job at that. And then it adds little touches like, the magic abilities and stuff like that.
And it's funny. It's just
yeah.
the whole thing is funny.
Yes. My only regret is that, my Xbox wasn't online at the time, so we only were able to play the demo for Castle Crashers. I've played it more before. But we weren't able to get like a real feel for what leveling up does and all that stuff.
I found the screen a little busy at times. That would be my only real complaint with the game. It seemed fun. I would have kept playing. Sometimes I sort of like lost what was going on. And that happened with some of the Turtles games too. I kind of was like, ugh. It never happened with River City Ransom.
No.
It happened a few times with Double Dragon, where I was sort of like, which character model is mine? Because they all kind of looked similar sometimes, and occasionally with Knights of the Round. But this one, there's a lot going on. Like in the background, like there's stuff happening, and like there's non-player characters that like they're doing things, and there's enemies everywhere, and then there's you and me, and it's like there's a lot happening in Castle Crashers. It's very busy.
Very busy. But I think if we played a little bit more, we might just get better at that.
Yeah, I would have gotten more accustomed to it. It was a lot to come to after playing like Nintendo versions of that.
Yes, for sure.
That's like a huge leap forward.
I think Castle Crash is a game that Dan and I might play again.
Yeah.
I would definitely like to give it another shot with other people, because I played it alone, but very little with actual other people. Any final thoughts on Castle Crashers? There's really not that much to say because we didn't play that much of it.
Yeah, it seemed fine. I didn't really, other than being a little busy, I don't have any complaints.
I like the art style a lot.
Art style is fun. I like cartoony games are fun.
Yeah. I should mention that when we took this leap forward, I do recognize that there actually are beat 'em ups for like PlayStation 2 and stuff like that. They made a crappy Golden Axe remake, the Bouncer for the PS2, stuff like that. They did exist, but it was a real genre that existed, and then it primarily went away.
It faded.
So we're not dummies, and we're not totally ignoring games that actually happen. Beautiful Joe. But generally speaking, it's like a genre died. Which is weird. I can't think of anything else. For a long time, fighting games had died, which is interesting because the fighting games and the beat 'em ups are so closely tied.
Mm-hmm.
But there are not a lot of genres that have just simply gone away.
Yeah, I can't really. Nothing really comes to mind.
How interesting.
Food for thought. If you can think of one, please let us know. Feel free to hit us up on Twitter and let us know.
That is a discussion I would love to have.
Yeah.
So the last game we briefly touched on was the Scott Pilgrim game. Again, our experience was limited because we only had one controller here. I've beaten all of Scott Pilgrim with another mutual friend of ours. Scott Pilgrim is basically the sequel to River City Ransom. It plays very similar. Coins drop out. Dan didn't quite reach it, but eventually you reach a town where you go in and you buy stuff like sushi and stuff.
That's cool.
It just happens to have a tie-in to a comic and a movie that I love as well. I thought Scott Pilgrim was great. Dan was a little less than impressed, but why don't you tell him why?
Well, I mean, this is this sort of general culture I am familiar with. So I obviously have heard of Scott Pilgrim, but I haven't read the comic book. I haven't seen the movie, so I didn't know. I'm aware of him in the background. I don't really know exactly what it is, so I didn't know what this game was really about. The game looks good. I like the art style. It feels fine, but I was getting really frustrated. I felt like I was getting a little overpowered at the beginning, like the first level. I feel like they could have eased me into it a little bit more. And my biggest frustration is that when you get knocked down, it takes too long to get back up. And I was just like, oh, come on, let's go. And that just made me instantly impatient. If I had more patience for this and gave it another chance, which I might do sometime. This also, we played it. I don't have the game. That's why we downloaded the demo. We were playing tonight at my house, and I only had one Xbox controller, so that's why Greg didn't play with me. So I was playing the demo by myself. If Greg was with me, that would have been more fun. I'm not like totally ruling it out. It's not like, oh, I hate this game. This is garbage. It's not that. It's just it didn't appeal to me initially. My biggest gripe really is just getting knocked down. That sucked.
Yeah, even watching you get knocked down, and then it was like 3 or 4 seconds before you would get back up.
Yeah,
and
way
it's just
too much
like,
time.
what are we waiting for here, guys?
I don't know why I'm getting really knocked down anyway. Just I get hurt.
Don't make that happen. That's a bad game choice.
Yeah. Also, this is and speaking of Halo, this would be kind of an interesting addition to a game like this. Is regenerative health. That didn't have it, did it? It's just regular health style.
Yeah.
Like, if you can manage to stay away from the guys on the screen long enough, your health should regenerate. And that would be an interesting way to keep the game going.
I don't know how I feel about that.
I just don't want to have to. I don't like dying in games. I don't like losing. I don't like repeating things. And that's what would have happened in this. I would have died, and that would have been the end of it, and I wouldn't have gotten farther in it.
I feel like you may have unlimited continues in that.
Well, then that's essentially the same thing. But
yeah.
Most games don't do that.
Any final thoughts on beat 'em ups in general? Do you wish?
Well, you should share your thoughts on Scott Pilgrim. Gameplay wise. How does the game feel to you? And what are your opinions?
It's been a long time since I played it.
Okay.
Probably 4 or 5 years at this point. I remember it feeling really good, and I remember enjoying playing it with a friend. The bosses get really crazy. I love the art style. The soundtrack is done by Anamanaguchi,
who we both love.
Who we both love.
The music and the style of the game is great. I have no complaints there.
It's a really funny game if you pay attention to it. There's a lot of jokes in the back. There's a lot of little references to other games, stuff like that.
I like that. I appreciate
which I
that.
appreciate.
That's thoughtful. I like that.
So I feel like while you were just playing it to just give it a quick try, if we were playing it and you actually had time to appreciate the stuff going on in the background, I think you might enjoy it a little bit more. Although that's always an interesting thing when it comes to games. It's like I'm not enjoying the gameplay, but I'm loving everything else. So what does that say about the game?
Yeah.
It's sort of that cross between interactive experience and gameplay.
I find that with Shadow of the Colossus, because the game interests me, the lore, everything about the game intrigues me. But I find the actual control of the character frustrating. So I find myself a little frustrated with the game in that sense, and that's why I haven't I've borrowed it from you. I'm playing through it, but slowly.
Yeah.
I will eventually make my way through it. It's just it's kind of how I feel sometimes when I'm playing it.
The best example I have is probably BioShock Infinite. That game feels like 2 distinct games to me. The first is this wonderful, beautiful world that has been meticulously crafted and is a complete joy to walk around, both when it's still beautiful at the beginning and when it's destroyed at the end.
I should mention that I haven't played it, but I have watched 3-hour cut together of all the cutscenes.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty familiar with it.
So any time when you're just walking around, BioShock is one of the best experiences I've ever had. It's like Disney World in a video game. It's simply wonderful. And then they cut all that and you play a crappy shooter. It's like, what happened to that awesome thing that was going on? Where is that, guys?
And that's funny because that's in the version I watched on YouTube, it was like a 3-hour thing and it took me a while to get through it, but sometimes they would include a little bit of the gameplay because it was relevant to the story, or it was a lead into a cutscene, it was necessary to have it, or a lead out. And I would see that, and I understand what you're saying just from watching that and not even having played it, because it was like they flipped a switch and it's like, it's time to shoot things.
Yeah.
And then it's like, run here, shoot this. And then it's like, oh, beautiful cutscene. Interesting things are happening. There's fun story, and it's a beautiful world.
Great characters. It's like, all right, I want to hear what this guy's going to say. Ugh, well, now I have to shoot something again.
Yeah. Or what's up with this giant weird bird thing?
Yeah.
And then, okay, I got to shoot some stuff.
And the first BioShock, and even the second BioShock, they still had a little bit of that, like, world building shooty. But as a whole, they just did a significantly better job of combining the two.
Halo is kind of like that sometimes, too.
Yeah, Halo's definitely like that sometimes. The less enemies there are in Halo, the more fun I'm having. Like, when there's one little group of elites and, like, a couple of grunts, and we're having, like, this outdoor skirmish or whatever, so much fun. It's like, wow, this is wonderful. When they throw, like, 800 flood at you, and you're just like, shotgun blast, run backwards, shotgun blast. Excruciatingly boring.
So this is I've been sort of thinking about this for a while, and this won't, like, sidetrack. Because this is a beat 'em up podcast. It won't sidetrack into a Halo thing, but I've been trying to figure out what's wrong with Halo. And
wait, what do you mean? What's wrong with Halo? Are you saying why Halo 4 was so unsatisfying?
No, the whole series in general.
Okay.
What's wrong with Halo? Because they crafted this incredible world and universe, and they're great games, and the controls are great, and like they're great games, but they never work the game, the part of the game you control. That's never really worked into the story. It's like, run here and press this button, and then story will happen. But like, it's never like, you need to hunt this elite because he's got like secret plans, and you need to like stop him from getting to the ship. And then it's like, you need to like assassinate him. It's never like in-game stuff. I mean, rarely. I thought maybe like with Tartarus, there was a little bit more of that maybe. But so much of it, especially in Reach, especially in 4, it's like, run here, press a button. Run here, press a button. And there's sort of a disconnect. And I feel like it's gotten worse as the series has gone on.
Halo 4 was just simply not fun. The only redeeming thing about Halo 4 was that it was good looking and short.
Yeah.
So by the time it ended, I wasn't tired of how good it looked. If Halo 4 was like another hour long, I probably wouldn't have finished it.
But then they show us the Librarian and the Didact, and they suck.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like when they revealed who Sylar actually is. It's like, it's better when he's a mystery. Anyway, beat 'em ups.
Well, just quickly finishing with Halo,
all right.
Because I like these thoughts.
You're not allowed to have thoughts, Greg.
I am. Now you sound like my mom. What makes this actually applies to Heroes. It applies to things like Lost, and Halo. What makes those games interesting is the mystery behind them. Once you know the answers, it's not very interesting anymore.
Yeah, it's a snoozer.
And especially with Reach, there was no question. You knew what happened.
Yeah.
There was no mystery to any of it. So, really, all you're doing is pressing buttons.
Yeah.
And in...
Whereas, like, in Halo 2, the whole thing was like, all right, we set up this world with 1. Now we're going to throw a whole bunch of crap at you. We're going to start answering questions, but you're going to have way more... You're going to start getting some answers, but there'll be way more questions by the end of this.
Right.
And that's why Halo 2 was like a super fun adventure.
What's the arc? Why are the Covenant attacking Earth? What are they looking for? Where are we going? Where are we now? What's happening?
Who are the prophets? Like, what's the history behind the Covenant? You know,
right. So while Halo 3 is still a flawed game, there was still that driving mystery. It's like, I got to find out what's going on here. This is fun. Reach, not at all. And 4, not at all. There was no mystery in 4. The guy appears and he's like, hey, how you doing? I'm the Didact. I hate you. Better chase me. That's it. That's the game.
Pretty much.
Better press a whole bunch of buttons behind me.
I think tying this whole thesis back into the beat-em-ups, I think out of all of these games, River City Ransom wasn't my favorite, but I found it the most intriguing.
Yeah.
And I think it's because like I wanted to know what was on the next screen. All the other games, it was like, there'll be guys, I'll punch them. okay. Even the Turtles games, like, I don't really know what the story was. I mean, the Turtles in Time, I guess. I understand the basic story there, but I didn't really care, I guess. It's fun to just beat up guys as a Ninja Turtle.
Right.
But River City Ransom, I wanted to know what was going to happen next. Like,
Yeah.
I wanted to know where it was leading me.
I agree with that.
And I guess to some degree, I would say the same thing to a lesser degree with Castle Crashers, and to a greater degree with Scott Pilgrim. Like, that was going somewhere, because it's essentially still River City Ransom. So it makes sense. Most of those games in that genre don't have that. It's like there's going to be another screen, and guys are going to be on it, and you hit them. It's not like there's a real story.
As a whole, just wrapping this all up now,
Sure.
I don't think I like beat 'em ups.
Yeah, that was your original question, man. I'm sorry. Yeah, they don't do much for me either.
They're really boring.
Largely. Largely.
My strategy from the first screen to the last screen didn't change at all.
True.
It was like punch, 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 jump, kick, punch, 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 jump, kick.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
Some games had like a special move you could do, but it would take some of your health.
Yeah, like Knights of the Round.
Mm-hmm.
That was obnoxious. Like,
don't like that.
Like, let me pick up something on the screen that gives me like a credit to use the special move.
Yeah, that'd be great.
That's the way to do that. If I don't have any of the credits, I can't do the special move.
Or in Scott Pilgrim, you can do like a Hadouken and do a special move, stuff like that. Which I also think was in Double Dragon, but we just couldn't figure it out. It was too complicated.
Yeah.
I just don't want to play these games again.
Are there, out of all the games we played, so we only beat one of them. We didn't get that far in any of them. For the rest of them.
Some through frustration, some through restrictions to the game.
Yeah. Are there any of these outside of the podcast you want to play? Like, honestly, like, you really legit want to play?
I mean, Castle Crashers I want to keep playing. I want to play that. If you had the game, I would suggest we go home and play it.
Okay.
I beat Scott Pilgrim, so I would consider that a game I wanted to play. Turtles is the only one I think that I'm ever going to play again. If somebody comes over and is like, hey, let's play a Super Nintendo game, I'd be like, oh, yeah, let's play some Turtles. It's just something you can sort of veg out to and enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, no. You might, if you were like, hey, I want to play River City Ransom again, and you came back to me next week and were like, look, Greg, I beat this game. It's really great. You should check it out. Like, it's wonderful single player. I'd give that one a shot. But that's it. I'm not going back to any of these other ones.
Yeah, that's, for the most part, that's how I feel. River City Ransom is probably the only one I would, of the old style, it's the only one I would go back to. The new ones, I would keep playing Castle Crashers. I don't know if I'll buy it or not.
Yeah.
I'd probably be more inclined to get Scott Pilgrim, because I feel like I'm not giving it enough of a chance. I recognize that. And it would be more fun to play with somebody else, too.
For sure. It is. It's just a ton of fun to play with somebody. So, today is Monday the 11th. Next week, so Monday the 18th, we are actually going to have another special episode of Player 2 Press Start. We're going to do Player 3 Press Start. We're going to have another podcaster / YouTuber on, Alex Krasny, who Dan actually has a lot more affiliation with him than I do. So why don't you just briefly say what he does?
Well, I honestly, I don't remember how I stumbled upon him on YouTube. He had some rant videos where he was I think he was complaining about, like, he works at a pizza shop sometimes, I think his parents own, and you know, he was complaining about customers, and then he had some videos about Mass Effect, and that might have actually been how I initially found him. He also likes neckties, so he's got a lot of videos about ties, and I really appreciate his storytelling, and I find his rants really entertaining. So I eventually contacted him on Facebook, and now we're Facebook friends, and he has also started getting into podcasting as well, and he has been doing, you know, a lot of retro video game playing lately, and we thought he would be a good addition for this episode. If he hasn't played all the games that we've talked about, he will have played most of them, and it would be good to get another perspective outside of our, you know, typical discussions.
So we're gonna have him on. We'll do just a brief discussion with him, see what he has to bring to the table about beat 'em ups. He was very enthused about talking about them. So I feel like maybe he has
more appreciation.
Yeah, Dan and I were a little bit down on most of these. So coming from his perspective, maybe he can put them in a slightly better light than we have.
The one that he pushed heavily for initially when we first broached the subject with him was River City Ransom,
which we have to give him some credit for.
Yeah, it's a unique game in that genre. So
the 18th, that's good. That's a whole month straight.
Wow,
of quality Player 2
that's
press start content.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for that. I am killagreg. You can find me at killagreg17.
I am Dan. You can find me at the Polygon1.
You can find us at Player2, PLAYRTWO.
And you can also find us at player2pressstart.com.
See you next week.
Adios.
You've never paid like $400 for something you just like collector's wise that you just love?
No.
Even if there was only like 1,000 copies ever made?
I've never paid that much for something.
If somebody was like, here's a Buzz Aldrin action figure from 1982, only 1,000 were made.
I already have a Buzz Aldrin action figure. I paid less than that.
You're bad at playing hypothetical games. This one's signed. Buzz signed it from space.
I don't really care that much
He
about
took a
autographs.
picture of you into space, signed it on the moon, brought it back. Only you and 500 other people have this picture of you. You want to pay $400 for that?
I feel like I would probably get the picture for free if I'm the one in it.
That's not how space works.
That is how space works.
What do you know about space?
I know. Oh yeah, what do I know about space?
Dan's wearing a NASA shirt right now.
I know about space law. Okay.
Oh, that's true. You write space law.
That's not true.
It is true. How do you think you got the T-shirt?
Because I went to Target. The monster tried to touch her badonkadonk, but I wasn't going to let it.